My name is Dr. Victoria Adams. In the world of technology, defined by open warfare fought with patent lawsuits, my title was Chief Intellectual Property Officer. My real job was peacemaker. I was the architect of a system that kept the giants from tearing each other apart. A system that turned the threat of mutually assured destruction into a profitable, collaborative peace. My office at Tech Vision Systems was a reflection of my philosophy. It was a stark, minimalist space of glass and steel, except for the windowsill. There, in a carefully monitored environment of controlled humidity and filtered light, sat a single, magnificent Paphiopedilum Rothschildianum orchid. Its striped, elegant petals had taken 7 years of meticulous care to bloom. Tending to it was my daily ritual. It was a living reminder that the most valuable things cannot be rushed. They cannot be broken into existence. They must be cultivated with patience and precision. This patient, organic process was the antithesis of the world I operated in, and it was the secret to my success. That success was called the licensing Labyrinth. It was a portfolio of 312 cross-licensing agreements that I had personally negotiated over a decade. It was an intricate web of legal truces that formed an impenetrable shield around Tech Vision. Just last year, I had brokered a peace between 2 warring semiconductor firms whose lawsuits threatened to disrupt the entire global supply of memory chips. It took 6 months of shuttle diplomacy, but the resulting agreement not only saved our production line, but created a new industry standard, with Tech Vision earning a small but significant fee on every transaction. It was my masterwork. More than just a defense, my department generated $890 million in annual revenue from this delicate piece. What he didn't understand about this system was its foundation. Blake Morrison, that is. Blake was the founder's son, a princeling of Silicon Valley who had inherited a board seat and believed he had also inherited his father's genius. He was 28 years old, wore designer sneakers with his suits, and spoke in a stream of cliches he'd learned from podcasts. His fatal flaw was the arrogant conviction that all established structures, especially legal ones, were merely obstacles to his disruptive vision. I remember the near disaster during the final engineering sign-off for the Momentum 6 phone. Blake, in his new role as head of marketing, decided it would be a brilliant act of radical transparency to live stream the event. He wanted to create hype. His team had set up cameras in the primary lab. I arrived just as he was encouraging the lead engineer to put a final component schematic up on the main screen for the live stream audience. I had to physically step in front of the camera. The schematic he was about to broadcast to the world contained 3 critical technologies we were licensing from a fierce competitor. Displaying it publicly would have been a direct violation of our agreement and an admission of infringement. Later, in his office, I had to explain the concept of a trade secret to him, as if he were a kindergartner. He just shrugged. But it would have looked so cool, he'd said, genuinely baffled by my concern for the law. I had built my system with one hidden feature, a feature I privately called the Adams Protocol. Every single one of the 312 agreements was a personal contract. They were not between Samsung and Tech Vision or Oracle and Tech Vision. They were between Samsung and Dr. Victoria Adams. Oracle and Dr. Victoria Adams. My reputation for unimpeachable ethics was the actual asset being contracted. Competitors would never sign an open-ended corporate agreement with Tech Vision that a future, more aggressive CEO could exploit. They signed with me. The contracts contained a key person clause. My termination automatically rendered all agreements void and subject to immediate renegotiation. I created it 20 years ago, after watching my first mentor get pushed out of his own company after a hostile takeover. His brilliant, elegant logistics system was dismantled in a month by a new CEO who didn't understand it and replaced with an expensive, inefficient mess. I swore to myself then that I would never allow my life's work to be destroyed by the casual ignorance of an arrogant man. The Adams Protocol wasn't a trap I built for Blake. It was a promise I had made to myself. It was a dead man's switch, designed to protect the entire ecosystem from a fool. I never expected to have to use it. Blake's attacks were petty at first. He referred to my department as the Breaks or the Department of No. He would forward condescending tech bro blog posts with titles like "Why Patents Are Obsolete" to my entire team. During my quarterly presentations, where I detailed the millions in litigation we had avoided, he wouldn't just look bored. He would loudly scoff and scroll through his phone, a deliberate performance of disrespect for the very framework that allowed his father's company to thrive. The breaking point arrived at the InnovateSphere 2025 Tech Conference. I was on a panel discussing the future of collaborative innovation. It was my domain, my area of expertise, in a room full of my peers. The moderator had just asked a thoughtful question about navigating IP in the age of artificial intelligence. The audience was engaged. Heads were nodding. People were taking notes on my explanation of how tiered royalty agreements could incentivize mutual growth. I felt the familiar satisfaction of explaining a complex idea and seeing the understanding dawn on people's faces. I commanded respect in this room. Then Blake strode onto the stage. He took a microphone from a stagehand, the feedback shrieking for a second, a sound of pure violation. "This is exactly the kind of thinking that's holding us back," he announced, his voice echoing through the auditorium. "Talking about collaboration and legal frameworks." He sneered the words. "True innovators don't ask for permission. They move fast and they break things." He turned to me, the spotlight catching the condescending smirk on his face. "We need visionaries, not patent lawyers." He looked out at the stunned audience of industry professionals. So, effective immediately, Victoria Adams is no longer with TechVision. We are now free to innovate without the legal mumbo-jumbo that slows down real disruption. The silence in the room was absolute. A cold wave of shock rippled through the crowd. He had not just fired me. He had used me as a prop, sacrificing my professional reputation to launch his own idiotic manifesto. This was the moment. The pure personal cruelty of it. He had no idea of the consequences. He thought he was delivering a triumphant keynote. In reality, he was signing his own corporate death warrant. I did not react. I gave a single, almost imperceptible nod, picked up my water bottle, and walked off the stage with unnerving composure. The public humiliation was a fire, but it only served to forge my resolve into something harder and sharper than steel. My mind was already moving, calculating. The emotional arc of his humiliation of me was over. The cold calculation of my response had just begun. That evening, I did not rage. I did not mourn. I went to my silent, immaculate home office. I stood before my prize-winning orchid, its perfect form a testament to patience and order. I carefully misted its leaves. The methodical, patient act centered me, clearing away the last remnants of public shame and leaving only a crystalline sense of purpose. Then, I sat at my desk and initiated the Adams Protocol. As my fingers moved across the keyboard, drafting the notice, I felt a strange sense of clarity. He called it mumbo-jumbo, the beautiful, intricate language of contract law. Each clause was a load-bearing pillar, each definition a carefully cut stone, placed with intent. He saw a dusty old library filled with rules designed to stop him. I saw an arsenal, and he had just handed me the keys. My hidden ace was the perfect weapon against his specific brand of ignorant arrogance. He believed contracts and laws were meaningless paper. I was about to show him they were the very fabric of his company's reality. I drafted a single master termination notice. It was a masterpiece of polite, dispassionate legal prose. It cited the key person clause in each agreement. It formally notified the recipient that the contract was now in a 90-day renegotiation period, after which it would be considered void. Using a secure, encrypted legal delivery service used for serving federal subpoenas, I simultaneously sent the notice to the general counsels of all 312 partner companies. With a single, silent click, I pulled the master thread that will unravel everything. There was a quiet, intimate satisfaction in the act. The clean, efficient execution. It felt like the final move in a chess game I had been setting up for 20 years. The knowledge that a complex system was now in motion, a system he could not see, could not understand, and could not stop. I had built the shield. Now I was unsheathing the sword that had always been hidden inside it. Blake, in his profound ignorance, likely saw the first few automated notifications and laughed. I can almost picture him, forwarding one to the head of our legal department with a one-line email, "Handle this noise." He was operating at the speed of innovation after all. He didn't have time for footnotes. He spent the next 3 months giving interviews to tech blogs, celebrating his bold new vision for an unconstrained tech vision, a company, finally, free from its legal shackles. But the clock was ticking. Day after day, the 90-day grace period dwindled. A week before the deadline, I received a clandestine call from my former deputy, Sarah. "Victoria, it's a bloodbath in here," she whispered. "Legal is buried under warning notices. Blake is just screaming at everyone, asking why nobody handled this. He's blaming your old department for creating such a fragile system. The engineers on the Momentum 7 team, they're devastated. Years of work about to be frozen." On day 91, the collapse began. The first lawsuit arrived by courier. It was from a major competitor, seeking an immediate injunction and 9 figures in damages for patent infringement on their core mobile processing technology. An hour later, another arrived, this one from a software giant concerning database architecture. Then 5 more. Within a week, TechVision was facing an unprecedented storm of 312 separate federal lawsuits. It was a coordinated legal carpet bombing. The courts act swiftly and without sentiment in cases of clear patent infringement. Injunctions were granted. The launch of the company's flagship Momentum 7 phone, scheduled for the following week, was summarily cancelled. Tech news sites exploded with headlines like "TechVision dead in the water" and "Morrison's disruption leads to self-destruction." Federal marshals, polite but firm, arrived at warehouses in Texas and distribution centers in Germany to halt shipments of every single TechVision product. The company's entire product line, from its flagship smartphones to its enterprise servers, was now illegal to sell. The $890 million in licensing revenue vanished from the quarterly report overnight, creating a black hole on the balance sheet. The company was not just bleeding cash, it was legally paralyzed, a ghost ship floating in a sea of litigation. The board, including Blake's horrified father, summoned me to an emergency meeting. It was not held at TechVision headquarters. It was at a neutral law firm in a sterile conference room that smelled of fear and expensive coffee. I arrived to the sound of panicked, angry voices. "He assured us this was just legal posturing," one board member was saying. He said Victoria built a fragile system. Blake was trying to deflect, his voice thin and cracking. It's not my fault the contracts were so weird. This is on her. I entered. The room fell silent. Blake was there, his designer sneakers looking absurd. His face was ashen, his trendy suit looking like a costume on a terrified child. I looked past him to his father, Marcus Morrison, a man I had respected for years. I saw no anger in his eyes, only a vast grey exhaustion. The look of a man watching a dynasty end not with a bang, but with the petulant whining of his own son. Blake had finally collided with a reality that could not be disrupted. "What have you done?" he whispered as I entered, his voice trembling. I didn't answer him directly. I walked to the head of the table and plugged my laptop into the room's projector. I turned to the monitor and projected a single image, an incredibly complex web diagram showing 312 nodes representing the world's tech giants, all connected to a single, stable point in the center. "This is the licensing labyrinth, Blake," I said, my voice even and cold. "For 10 years it has protected this company. It was your shield, allowing you to innovate in peace. You thought it was a cage, so you threw away the key." I used a laser pointer to trace a few lines. "This line here is the patent for the cellular modem. By severing it, you made every phone we sell illegal. This one, graphics processing. This one, battery management. This one, the user interface swipe gesture." I went on, naming a dozen more. The look on his face when he finally realized his mistake was a masterpiece of dawning horror. I clicked to the next slide. "You haven't just violated one patent. You have violated the core intellectual property of every major technology company in the world, simultaneously." I let that sink in. The silence in the room was heavier than stone. "You didn't move fast and break things, Blake. You moved fast and you broke everything. The multi-district litigation was a Gordian knot that no single court could untangle. It was the largest intellectual property crisis in history. The 312 plaintiffs, communicating through their lawyers, proposed a single, unprecedented solution to the presiding federal judge. They would only negotiate with one person they all trusted to act ethically and efficiently, Dr. Victoria Adams. The judge, seeing no other path forward, issued a court order appointing me as a special master with the authority of a CEO to bring TechVision into compliance and negotiate a global settlement. My return to power was not a choice made by the board. It was mandated by the very legal system Blake had so arrogantly despised. My triumph was absolute. Blake Morrison was not just fired. In the discovery process, his emails and the recorded video of his statements from the InnovateSphere conference were entered as evidence of willful infringement. This charge, the legal equivalent of a capital crime in patent law, carries triple damages and opens him up to personal criminal liability. His mantra of "move fast and break things" was now Exhibit A in a federal case against him. He had traded his father's legacy for a soundbite, and now that soundbite might land him in prison. But I wasn't finished. The victory was sweet, but it needed a coup de grace, a final, crushing blow that would turn his humiliation into a legacy. A year later, after stabilizing TechVision and restoring the licensing labyrinth to an even stronger position, I, as CEO, held a press conference. I announced the company's largest ever philanthropic initiative, the Morrison Center for Ethical Innovation. Funded by a significant portion of the damages recovered from Blake personally, the center would provide pro bono legal services to young innovators. It would create educational programs on the importance of collaborative intellectual property law. I stood at the podium and spoke of the need for a new generation of leaders who understood that true innovation is built on respect, not disruption. I never mentioned his name, but I didn't have to. I had turned the toxic legacy of his ignorance into a foundation for educating the next generation, forever linking his name to the very principles he tried to destroy. His failure was now a permanent, constructive part of the industry's future. The final scene is this. I am in my new, expansive CEO office. The view of the city is vast. On my large, clean desk, there is no clutter. Only my laptop, a phone, and a collection of magnificent, blooming orchids. Each one a testament to the rewards of patience, cultivation,